The next debate is for House District 54. It encompasses Mesa and part of Delta County. And here to moderate the House District 54 debate is Michael Murphy, incoming board chair of Club 20 and co-owner of M4 Ranch Group. Michael?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Christian. I'm excited to moderate House District 54 debate. We'd like to welcome Republican candidate Matt Soper and Democratic candidate Alice Marie Slavin Emond to the stage. Thank you both for joining us this morning and for your willingness to serve the great part of Colorado we all call the Western Slope. Before we begin, we'd like to go over some of the ground rules. Candidates should focus on ideas, not personalities. Candidates should be courteous and should not make inflammatory statements. Disrespectful or attacking speech or profane language will not be tolerated. Candidates may not display a prop of any kind. Candidates must strictly adhere to the time limits of each section of the debate. I reserve the right to cut off a candidate who exceeds the time limit or redirect a candidate if their remarks are not pertinent to the elected office. Do both of you guys agree to that?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Additionally, we ask all the audience members to exhibit professional decorum during these debates. Limited applause is allowed, but unruly outbursts or disruptions are prohibited, and the debate moderator may penalize a candidate's time if their supporters are unable to maintain decorum. Audience members should also be aware that these debates will be filmed and live streamed for public viewing. A coin toss was conducted backstage, and candidate Soper is chosen to begin opening remarks. Candidate Soper, you have 2 minutes for opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor of a lifetime to be able to represent House District 54 in the Colorado House of Representatives. I was first elected in 2018, 4 years ago, and a lot has happened since then. We've had a global pandemic. We've had the George Floyd riots. We now are in a recession of epic proportions. But it truly, through all this, all the tough times, it has been the honor of a lifetime to represent the place where I was born and raised, the place where I went to college, right here at Colorado Mesa University. I have to remember since they changed names. But I want to run for re-election to continue to focus on what's near and dear to Western Colorado, and that's jobs and the economy. Right now, inflation is killing us. If you've been to the grocery store lately, you only get half the groceries that you would have had just a mere 4 years ago. Just look at gas prices as well. Also crime. Colorado is number 1 for auto thefts. We're number 1 for cell phone thefts, laptop thefts. These are items that are personal to Coloradans. They carry our data, and yet our laws are such that we are not prosecuting these criminals adequately when they take something that's near and dear to our heart. And I want to change that, to be able to be tough on crime, because we can't let this continue. And then lastly, we must protect Colorado's water and our agricultural heritage here on the Western Slope. Farmers are under attack. We've seen it from the wolf initiative that was passed through. We've seen it from the farm labor bill that was ramrodded through. This is going to hurt Western Slope farmers. It's going to make it incredibly difficult for us to be able to get our crops to market. Farmers have a tough time as it is right now. They pay freight both ways. They sell wholesale and buy retail. We must look after those that make up House District 54, and that's our agrarian economy. I'd like to ask for your vote this coming November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, candidate Slavin Emond, you have 2 minutes for opening remarks.
Thank you. Representative Soper, guests of Club 20. I am Alice Marie Slavin Emond. I'm a family nurse practitioner and a healthcare administrator for a family clinic in Delta. I am a fourth-generation native Coloradoan. I'm proud to say that two out of my 3 university degrees are from Colorado universities. I am married to a retired, I want to say crabby, but ranch-raised veterinarian, educated at CSU, so that's where that connection came in. I'm a very proud grandmother of all native Colorado grandchildren. We live in Delta. We raise meat goats, and we use the Colorado ag water to irrigate our pastures too. I stand before you to give you a choice. We can either fuel the diversity and the anger of the political divide, or we can change and vote for that change. We need to look at building bridges. We need to look at the real solutions to the challenges that face the Western Slope. Representative Soper brought them up, and so I'm not going to, but good morning to you all.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll now move into the question and answer portion of our debate. Each candidate will be asked to respond to 4 questions that have been submitted by Club 20 members and our partners. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. The candidate who goes first for each question will also have the opportunity to offer a 30-second rebuttal to the other candidate's response for that particular question. The candidate that went first in opening remarks will offer the first response to the first question. So, first question goes to candidate Soper. Question number 1 is, how have you or will you work collaboratively with the many competing interests in your district? Once again, how have you or how will you work collaboratively with the many competing interests within your district?
Thank you, Michael. That's a great question. If you look back over my track record over the last 4 years, what you'll see is that almost all of my bills are bipartisan, and it's great to also see some members of the audience who are also my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. I've run bills with each and every one of the members that I see across the audience. That reflects the diversity that we see also within my district. I know that I don't just represent my own political party. I represent everyone in House District 54, which means that I take time to listen and to address those concerns as well. The legislature is certainly a challenging environment. We do our best to advocate for it. Right now, on the Western Slope, we're in a double minority. Denver and Boulder controls most of the state. We only have about 10% of us out here. So we have to have an all-hands-on-deck approach if we want to protect the Western Slope. And it also means fighting, running amendments, staying up late at night, and doing whatever it takes to advocate for the people of House District 54.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Slavin Iman, same question. How have you or will you work collaboratively with the many competing interests within your district?
I think one of the things that we need to always remember is that you need to look at character. One of the joys of my life was being the president of an 82-person Rotary. Now, anybody who knows anything about Rotary clubs know that it's kind of like herding the cats because they're all in charge. And I have pulled together, and we had gotten every goal we wanted to do the year that I was president. I was the first woman president of a 52-year-old club. I was the 8th female member. So I have the ability to pull people together and to get all of the chiefs organized and get something done. I was really taken by a remark made by 3 of our legislators at a meeting I was at that they can't get anything done. And I'll discuss that later as we go, that I have proof in the pudding of being able to pull people together.
Thank you, ma'am. Matt, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Well, I'll definitely respond to that last part. And I want to appreciate you coming to my own town hall and fundraiser. That was pretty impressive. But what I will tell you is that we're completely down. We have 24 House Republicans and 41 Democrats. It's a mathematical problem. So for us as Republicans to be able to get anything done in the House of Representatives, I would have to convince 9 Democrats to come over to do that. That's impossible. The Democrats are lockstep right now, and they're going to ramrod their own agenda through with disregard to Western Colorado.
Thank you, sir. Question number 2, Alice Marie, we'll start with you. Mental health is in a critical place in Colorado and has direct ties to our economy, public safety, and our healthcare system. Do you feel the state is taking the right steps toward tackling this problem? Why or why not?
We've got a good start on it. Several of our law enforcement agencies are having ride-alongs with people who are qualified to help in mental health crises. There is funding available for some pilot programs out of different organizations that are in our healthcare system that we can have a mental health specialist on call. I've worked in Colorado Corrections, and I see where our mental health issues have started when people were not incarcerated. And I do believe that there's a way to help our mental health system, especially through our telehealth. My daughter happens to be a therapist, and so I live with the challenge every day of trying to get mental health care, especially to rural communities. And Delta certainly would qualify as one of our rural communities with very little resources. We're getting there. We just have to keep plowing. It's not an overnight solution. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Matt, same question. Mental health is in a critical place in Colorado and has direct ties to our economy, public safety, and our healthcare system. Do you feel the state is taking the right steps toward tackling this problem? Why or why not?
Thank you, Michael. That's a great question. You know, mental health is probably one of the major issues facing Colorado, and the legislature has made major steps, major bipartisan steps to try to tackle the mental health crisis here in Colorado. As a matter of fact, I was on legislation just this year to be able to adequately address being able to have inpatient treatment, in-home treatment, not inpatient, in-home treatment of mental health patients. It's just very important that we continue to chip away. Right now, I'm very concerned. If someone comes to one of our local hospitals and they're having a mental health breakdown, either they stay in the ER under an M1 hold, or we have trouble getting them to any sort of a facility like Mine Springs here in Grand Junction. Otherwise, we're looking at sending them over to the Front Range. This is just inadequate. We actually need more mental health beds here on the Western Slope, and I would actually propose seeing more providers in our local hospitals so that we don't actually have to be sending someone out of the local community, that they could be treated in their home.
Thank you, sir. Alice Marie, you have 30 seconds.
I'd like to say that mental health treatment still is not being paid for in any extensive means. It's very costly for our hospitals to have mental health providers on call in the emergency room, but we have tried that and it wasn't a bad experience, but what we need to do is continue to investigate what we can do to help with the mental health crises. And it's true, we don't have enough mental health beds. I am particularly concerned about youth mental health beds because we literally have to send them out of state if we need youth beds.
Thank you, ma'am. So the next question number 3, Matt, you're first. Colorado's roots were founded in agriculture. If elected, how will you work to protect agriculture and defend agricultural water rights?
Thank you, Michael. Western Colorado, House District 54, is agriculture. I represent more orchards, more vineyards, as a matter of fact, more heads of cattle than people. But we also are home to the oldest water rights in Colorado, or at least some of the oldest water rights here in Colorado. And it's important to protect that because through the innovation and invention of irrigation, we are able to turn the Grand Valley into the beautiful green valley that you see today. And I want to keep it that way. I want to keep farmers and ranchers on their family farm. And that means doing what I've continued to do in the past. For example, this year I ran a bill to allow irrigation districts to loan money to the lateral ditch to be able to line and pipe for water conservation. I also worked on a hydroponics bill to be able to change the business personal property tax to allow for more year-round growing here in Colorado for some water conservation. But it's also important that we recognize that farmers need to innovate or they will die, and we need to protect our water.
Thank you, sir. Alice Marie, same question. Colorado's roots were founded in agriculture. If elected, how would you work to protect agriculture and defend agricultural water rights?
I want to be very sure that we keep the low tax rate that we do have on agricultural land so that we can continue to farm and not be burdened with heavy taxation. If any of you know about the land-grant colleges, you know that Colorado State University's adult out of the college area arena is extension service. Extension service is what provides our farmers and ranchers with the knowledge to work with new technology and with new husbandry ideas, and we need to really make sure that that is always funded and funded well. Our extension service is a lifeline. Our research centers really are the people who give us the information on how to make it best in our area. We need to always keep the CSU Extension Service well funded. I think that water rights, it's going to be fights. Those are just fighting words all the way across, and conservation is going to have to occur in ag as well as everywhere else.
So Matt, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I just want to make it clear that even though the ruling we heard recently that said reductions have to come from lower basin states of Nevada and Arizona, this is temporary. All hands on deck in Colorado must be united, and it must be a united voice that any future reductions must come from the lower basin states. We also need to stand united that we don't see any more of these tunnels coming over to the western slope to steal our water. That's why we need to stand with our brothers and sisters in the San Luis Valley and protect any water grab there as well.
Thank you, sir. Going to move into the fourth question. Alice Marie, you will go first.
Okay.
Question 4. As a Western Slope legislator, you will be outnumbered by those from the Denver metro areas and the Front Range. How will you stand up for Western Colorado to ensure that our voice does not get lost? What strategies or relationships might you implement to ensure the success of Western Slope legislative priorities?
Well, you know, the new kid on the block doesn't have a whole lot of clout, but I am a native Coloradoan. I have friends all over the state and classmates who have even sent me money for my campaign. I would like to be really upfront and know that it's going to take time to build some relationships. I am noted for going to Republican meetings as well as other meetings that are available in the communities. So it's, again, I think that building those relationships and building bridges will do us more in getting things done for the Western Slope.
Thank you, ma'am. Matt, same question. As a Western Slope legislator, you will be outnumbered by those from the Denver metro area and the Front Range. How will you stand up for Western Colorado to ensure that our voice does not get lost? What strategies and relationships might you implement to ensure the success of Western Slope legislative priorities?
Thank you, Michael. You know, it's a great question, and it's also a good opportunity to have a track record. Over the past 4 years, you can look over my voting record and look over the bills I've sponsored, and you can see that I have a long history, probably more so than many of my colleagues, of actually crossing the aisle and talking to the other side. Politics is about relationships, and it's about getting to know your fellow members, those in Denver and Boulder, and being able to have that friendship develop as well. Because being on the Western Slope, being a Republican, it's a double minority, and we can't get anything done, even the slightest, without being able to first talk. And it all starts with that conversation. A good example would be there was a bill to ban plastic bags, and I knew the sponsor quite well. And we sat down in his office over and over again, and I said, your bill would ban the bags around potatoes and beans and even IV bags in hospitals. And we worked out this giant amendment package to be able to protect those Coloradans from seeing the ban implemented on them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Candidate Slavin Iman, you have 30 seconds.
You know, we can get their attention because we grow their food. And I think that we always have to have that opportunity in front of them at all times. When I worked to help with another legislature in another state, that particular state grew peanuts. There was never a day that the legislators did not have a bag of peanuts in front of them. Again, it's what you see and what you hear over and over is what you look at and be serious about.
Thank you. Thank you both. We'll now move into the cross-examination portion of this debate. Each candidate will be given 4 minutes to ask questions of their opponent on matters pertinent to the race or office. Please be reminded that questions should be pertinent to the office you are running for and should not include any attacking speech or profound language. I reserve the right to redirect a candidate if their remarks are not pertinent to the elected office. Candidate Soper, you will begin the cross-examination.
Well, thank you, Michael. And I appreciate this opportunity that Club 20 has. This is quite unique from any other forum or debate. Mm-hmm. In October 26th, 2020, my opponent, Alice, you wrote on Facebook, actually numerous posts to this regard, and even since then, that one thing you'd like to do if elected to the state legislature would be to increase tuition for out-of-state students at our higher education institutions. I was quite troubled by this by a couple of reasons. First of all, it should be the universities and colleges in Colorado, the presidents and board of trustees that set what the tuition and rates are. So that's one issue that I have with this. The second issue that I have with this is already out-of-state students are paying 2 to 3 times more than in-state students. The Colorado taxpayer is only subsidizing our state colleges and universities at 6%. And on top of that, raising the out-of-state tuition actually only increases the student debt crisis that we currently find ourselves in. And looking at over $1 trillion in student debt that's around this country, I really think that this is something that we really shouldn't be engaging in, because if inflation is bad now, I can only imagine if your policy were to actually get through and into law, what would happen then? So I wondered if you'd care to comment about that.
I sure do. I think that education is what makes America great. We are such a good country to take in and give education free to our younger children. When we get up into the university and the technological levels after high school, we've got to be very, very serious about tooling our workforce. I am very concerned that out-of-state students are using our resources that we paid for. They also, if you can afford to come to Colorado, you can afford to pay our tuition. Our people need the opportunity to go to school at a reasonable cost because you, every one of you, paid for their tuition in some way, and I think that they should not have to have a horrible burden when they come out of school. And I do have...
Actually, let's address that a little bit more. So right now, the Colorado taxpayer is only subsidizing tuition and fees at 6%. So if a student here on Mesa State, that's 6% from the taxpayers. And so if you're actually talking about increasing the taxpayer burden
Matt, you know
to
that
students,
we do not rank very high in education support. We are 40th in all of the states in the nation. And out of the 20th states that are in the western state, we don't
That's exactly why we're having
anything.
trouble here.
We don't fund it in comparison to 13 of our other western states. We do not fund education as much as they do. And I think that that is a crying shame. I think that that is what makes the fact. You and I have had an education, great educations. And that is because our parents were able to help us and we were smart kids.
My parents didn't help me at all. I picked corn to pay for my education. I was able to earn scholarships, and I worked at a law firm.
Mike
That's
and I
how
were
earned my
just talking
education.
about the fact
I
that
was
we
not
held
privileged
jobs
like
to
you.
get through school.
Let's
And
actually
we
move
paid
to a
our
different
own
Let's
question.
not talk over each other.
Anyway.
Yeah. So under Colorado law, there's this notion, and we all have to abide by Colorado law in this room, that a reservation is an obligation to pay the ticket price. So if you make a reservation for a ticket, you undertake an obligation to pay that price. You reserved a ticket to the Delta County Republican Lincoln Day dinner, and you have still not paid that ticket price. That is a legal
I
obligation.
All right,
charged it
let's
to my
move on
account.
to the next section.
That is a legal obligation that you still owe. Do
They
you
have my
intend to pay
credit
that?
card.
All right, guys, time's up. So, candidate Slavin Iman, you have 4 minutes.
Again, are we talking about closing remarks? Or
No,
are we talking
no, ma'am,
about?
this is just your cross-examination part. You've given 4 minutes to ask your opponent.
Yeah, Matt, those
questions
are
on
those
that.
are things that your party has to settle because I gave them the credit card. So anyway, I want to go back. Matt, I got a question for you. House Bill 1257 related to, it had a very unusual title on it. It had to do with juvenile justice, what have you. And at the end of all of it, there was this law to make it a felony, from a misdemeanor to a felony, to have any problems with licensure. And I want to know what precipitated that.
Sure. That's a great question. House Bill 1257, I was part of that along with Representative Mike Weissman from Aurora. He's a Democrat. He's chair of the House Judiciary Committee, has been for the last 4 years. This bill came from the Colorado Criminal and Juvenile Justice Commission. It's a CCJJ bill. They're our commission here in Colorado of some of the greatest legal minds and some of the greatest minds in Colorado that helped the legislature craft model pieces of legislation. And over the last couple of years, or for 4 years really, we've done a lot to reform our criminal justice laws here in Colorado. 1257 was a massive cleanup bill. And it's really important to look at the details that were included, because when we came through last year, a lot of things were missed in the last minute. What you should focus on in 1257 is that we have a major gun issue that's included here. That's probably the one question you really ought to be asking me about, is the legislature had mistakenly gotten rid of the provision that previous offenders with firearms couldn't have their firearms removed for future convictions with firearms.
I'm
It's
talking,
really important that we
I'm talking about
focus
Dora.
on the most important part of the bill, and that's it, getting violent offenders in a position where they're not going to commit crimes again. When it comes to licensure, it was also going back to second offenses, egregious offenses, intentional offenses, and that's what you're looking at there.
Well, does that mean not living in the district you are saying you're representative? Is it saying that you're an attorney and you're not licensed? I'm going back to, what are you doing in relationship to it's again, healthcare providers who are in question with anything, myself included one time, had to wait 9 weeks for them to say, oh, we're sorry, it's a clerical error. For 9 weeks, my families that I take care of couldn't have health care. That's part of that bill that snuck in there.
So,
and those are the things that happen.
Out of the 60,000 nurses in Colorado, less than 0.25% have ever had a letter of admonition, not to mention having their license pulled as you did.
I didn't have it pulled. It was put on hold.
If you look at Dora's website, it shows that it was pulled.
No.
All right, guys, we're probably going to move to closing remarks. So I'd like to ask, each candidate now has 2 minutes to present closing remarks. Candidate Soper, you're first.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you to the members of Club 20. It's been the honor of a lifetime to represent the district that I was born in, the district I was raised in, the district that my great-great-grandparents came to in 1887. To be able to fight to protect our water and our farmers and ranchers, to be able to be tough on crime, to try to help our business community actually see a profit, to be able to tackle inflation that's crippling families' budgets, and then to also look out for education. It's important that we see students from around the globe or around our great nation be able to study in our amazing state. Colorado is truly one of the best places in the world. I've seen well over 40 countries in my lifetime, and I can tell you that Western Colorado is just about the best place on earth. This is truly blessed by God. Every day that I walk into the Colorado House of Representatives, I say a prayer, and I ask God for guidance and for wisdom to be able to do the right things for the people of House District 54. I take my responsibility as a legislature very serious, and knowing that I represent each and every one of you, I think about your faces every time I'm casting a vote. It's tough. but we come back every single weekend because I want to be with my constituents. I want to be part of each and every one of the communities. That's why when it comes to, say, Colburn, going up to a rodeo, but also helping them solve their broadband problems, being out in Fruita and Loma, being able to talk to them about some of their water problems out there as well, from people trying to buy and dry their farmland. And also in Delta, being able to ensure that we have access to health care and working to save our local hospital. These are issues that are local issues, but they're issues that allow us to live in the place we call home, in the place that we love, and it's near and dear to our hearts. I'd like to ask for your vote this November to serve a third term in the Colorado House of Representatives. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Candidate Slavin Iman, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. As a conservative Democrat, I've provided you with the information of my knowledge base for the Western Slopes challenges and some possible solutions. I think the biggest challenge ahead of all of us as the legislature is getting a fair access to state resources. So far, we haven't been getting much fairness from that. If we keep sending the same representation, we will continue to get the same results. The times are changing, says Andy Warhol, and we better change to keep up with them. If you know this one. If you're not the lead dog on the sled, the picture from your point is always the same. I know that there's an importance of our populace for working folks. When I look at it, 1/3 of our population in both of these counties are, 1/4 are people under 18 and over 65. So half of the population is working for the rest of us. I am sincerely grateful to have the opportunity to practice this freedom of speech. I'm a dedicated citizen and a qualified candidate, and I give you a choice. Please fly our flag and use your American privilege and vote. Best travel, safety. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both for your dedication to Western Colorado. We appreciate you participating in today's House District 54 debate from Club 20 in Western Colorado. Thank you both.